Hi there, and welcome to Ian's Engage channel. I'm Ian. In my previous upload, I settled on the final-ish track plan for Shelfington, and in this installment, I begin some actual construction, beginning with the baseboards. But first, a big thank you to Stephen at the excellent Elven Home channel. He gave me a shout out on one of his videos, and as a result, my subscriber count has increased dramatically. Thanks also to everyone who has subscribed and commented because of Stephen's kind mention of my channel. I only hope I can create content that is worthy of watching. In case you haven't seen Stephen's channel, I've left a link in the description and would encourage you to go and check it out if you haven't already. So, on with the video. As already discussed, I'd finally settled on a baseboard measuring 4 feet by 14 inches. I'd opted to use 12mm birch plywood for the base and 2-inch by 1-inch battens to mount it on. I started off by cutting up the battens to provide a frame to screw the base to help prevent the plywood from bowing. Thankfully, 9 of the 10 planed pine timber battens I'd purchased were all straight and true, so didn't need any attention before they could be used. Now, I did record the whole process of me building the baseboard, but as you can see from the short clip I've already shown, it's not a pretty sight and doesn't make compelling viewing. So, if you don't mind, I'll continue mostly with pictures. For the frame, I decided to go with a rectangle of battens to support the plywood top, and I also decided to add a batten across the middle to give it a little more strength. After cutting the battens to the appropriate length, I temporarily secured them to the plywood using quick release clamps to hold them in place while I fixed them together. I screwed the battens together, drilling pilot holes for each screw so I could ensure the battens wouldn't split and the screws went in straight. I used copper screws that were supposed to be self-countersinking, but a couple have remained proud of the battens, so I'll need to go back and countersink them properly. Once the frame was made, I flipped everything over and secured the plywood to the frame using more screws. I may remove the screws that go in the middle batten and glue it to the plywood instead. Sod's Law says the screws will foul something above them at some point, so better safe than sorry, as they'll be impossible to get to once the foam and cork has been glued down on top of the plywood. Next, I selected more battens for legs. I pondered long and hard on how long to make the legs and still couldn't really make up my mind. I'd like the layout to be low enough to view from a seated position, but not too low that my knees couldn't cope with getting underneath to sort wiring issues out. In the end, I decided to cut the legs to 85 cm, as I could always cut them down later if the baseboard turned out to be too high. Initially, I'd been going to attach just one 2 by 1-inch batten to each corner of the frame, but changed my mind at the last moment as I thought this may not be as stable as I thought it could be. So in the end, I decided to screw 2 battens together to make each leg, creating a 2 by 2-inch piece of timber to give more stability. That meant I needed to cut 8 pieces of 85 cm batten, screwing 2 together to make each leg, ending up with 4 legs. I used the same method of drilling and screwing as I had with the frame, and clamped everything down while I did this to ensure everything remained in alignment while I fixed the battens together. No one was more amazed than me that when I stood the legs up on the garage floor, they remained vertical. It was indeed a minor miracle. Next, I screwed each leg to the corner of the frame, making sure I was careful not to drill and screw into a location that already contained a screw. The next job was to brace each set of legs with more battens. I did this with the side legs and then again for the legs along the back, which gave the whole structure a lot more strength. I wanted to leave the front open so I could push boxes beneath the layout for storage. Finally, I've ordered some furniture leg levelers to allow the whole baseboard to be levelled once in situ. But, rather miraculously, it already appears to be level, which is the second time a minor miracle has occurred during this build. As you've seen, I can't confess to having any carpentry or DIY skills, so I've probably done this all wrong, but was actually pretty pleased with my handiwork by the time I'd finished. The whole stand certainly feels rigid enough and will definitely withstand the weight of an N-gauge model railway, and is probably overkill for the intended purpose. It was good to have finally done something tangible to move the project along rather than sitting at the computer planning track layouts. Okay, so that's about it for this update. If you've got any hints, tips, useful tools or techniques to pass on to a beginner in N-gauge modelling, or if you simply want to say hello, then please do so in the comments section. Anything and everything you've got to say will be greatly appreciated, but please be gentle about my carpentry skills, or lack of them. Anyway, thanks very much for watching, and hopefully I'll have another update soon as I lay down some track and see if my track plan actually works. Bye.